get vaccinated. Now.
Now, before it's too late. You're gonna die in there. All of you. You are gonna die.
What do you say to Vladimir Putin?
To answer the first question, I'm laughing too. They actually, well, look, I mean, he has made clear that the answer is, I believe he has in the past essentially acknowledged that he was, there are certain things that he would do or did do. I don't think it matters a whole lot in terms of this next meeting we're about to have.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Hey, what did you think about the Putin-Biden summit?
You know, I actually called some of my friends back in Russia the other day.
Oh yeah, what did they have to say?
Not much, it was mostly laughing. They said maybe he will challenge him to push-up contest.
Then strangled them, and finally dismembered their bodies.
Right.
Then do and homelessness and all that.
And now, the voice you've been waiting for.
There is a secret song at the center of the world, and its sound is like razors through flesh. I'm here to turn up the volume.
Well, it's a good thing we got Joe Biden in the White House. You know, that way we won't get embarrassed on a world stage by having a president that looks like a jackass. You wouldn't know it from watching all the media coverage of what happened at the G7, but there was a few gaffes. Like coming out and they're introducing everybody, and they just introduced the South African president. And then Sleepy Joe goes, "Hey, wait, you didn't introduce the guy from South Africa." And all the other people just laugh. You silly old bastard. Not a good look. And then you had these pictures come out of what looks like the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, scolding Biden. He's got his finger pointing in his face, and Biden looks all flustered. Oh. And this is a guy who literally just got bitch slapped by one of his citizens a week ago. Oh, but I'm sure if it had been Trump, it would have been the same thing, right? Oh, wait. But, you know, you watch the news wrap-ups talking about what happened, and they made it seem like, oh, he did a great job letting them know that America's back and rebuilding the relationships with our allies that Trump had put strain under and blah, blah, blah. It's amazing the amount of just coddling that the press does with this guy. And then he comes out for his press conference and he's got his little list of reporters that are going to ask him questions, and he calls them off the list. He even says the silent part out loud and says, well, as usual, you know, they gave me a list, and so I'll just start calling them off. And then he takes a full day off to get prepared for his big summit with Vladimir Putin. I guess taking that day off did some good because, you know, he didn't shit his pants or completely forget where he was or start babbling totally incoherently. So, you know, I guess we'll take that as a win. That's about the closest thing we're going to get to a win out of this guy. And then afterwards, they do their separate press conferences, and Putin's up there getting asked questions by all different kinds of media, Russian media, American media, you know, ABC News and Bloomberg, all these American But did Biden do that? Did he take any questions that weren't, you know, pre-approved total softball questions? No. One thing they did talk about, I found it kind of funny how they talked about it, but apparently Biden gives Putin this list of 16 pieces of critical infrastructure that are forbidden and off limits for the Russians to hack, which makes no goddamn sense. So you were like, okay, so here's a list, these 16 things, make sure that nobody in Russia hacks these things. And you got to be like, So anything besides these 16 things is okay? Well, no, but these 16 things are extra bad. I mean, what the fuck? Why would you just not say, do something about hacks coming from Russia? Oh, no, there's this list of the very, very bad things. Whatever you do, don't let anybody fuck with these. So, I mean, if I were Putin, I'd be thinking, is this guy for fucking real? Am I being punked? And it gets kind of annoying, all the, oh, well, you know, Putin's such a horrible fucking guy because, you know, what happened with Ukraine and the Crimea, and, you know, he just annexed part. Okay, yeah, that's, he should have gone in there and overthrown it with intelligence operatives, right? Like a gentleman. That's what we did to the Ukraine. We fucking sent the State Department and the CIA in there to overthrow the goddamn country. You know, we'll sit there and point our finger at other countries and go, you're bad. You meddled in an election. Yeah, because we don't do that. Oh, no, we don't meddle in any elections. We don't overthrow governments. We don't assassinate people. We don't do any of that. So I'll hear people talking, and there'll be people that I agree with on a whole lot of stuff, but then they go into this just hate fest for Russia, those sneaky Russians and that fucking criminal Putin. It's like, Jesus Christ. Such hypocrites. And speaking of how wonderfully moralistic and above board our government is always with us, there's a story that came out the 14th about how there's a lot of questions about what actually happened on January 6th. And they like to talk about it every fucking day, about the insurrection. All these people that showed up without weapons, that was an insurrection. And when people took over 6 city blocks of an American city and said, this is no longer America, this is an autonomous zone, we declare this, that wasn't an insurrection. They didn't even, you know, most people don't even realize that fucking happened. But for almost a month, there was a 6 city block area that was declared to be no longer a part of the United States. That's literally an insurrection. But no, what happened on January 6th was the worst fucking thing since the Civil War. And they've had a lot of people that were guilty of no more than just trespassing, when a lot of them just got let in by the cops. There's plenty of video of these people just literally getting let in, and the cops finally going, all right, you guys, once they had breached on one side, they were letting them in on the other. The cops were like, fuck it. Now those people are sitting in jail cells in solitary confinement for months on end, and now you find out that, oh, well, there's a lot of people that were actually the people doing the breaking and fucking shit up that are not indicted. They're unindicted co-conspirators. And this story came out from Revolver.news about how there's a lot of unindicted co-conspirators that, you know, by any reasonable stance should be indicted, but they're not, which, you know, if you know anything about COINTELPRO or federal undercovers or paid confidential informants, that's what happens to them. They just are unindicted, unnamed co-conspirators. They get let off. The people that they were in there to, you know, set up and wind up and radicalize, they go down. And then the FBI gets to go, oh, look, you know, that's what most of the terror plots that have been foiled by the FBI were actually weaved by the FBI. There's even been New York Times articles about this. And, you know, this goes back to the 60s. The COINTELPRO at the FBI were infiltrating the Black Panthers, and that's a big part of what happened when the Black Panthers split into their different factions. It was because of FBI people that got put in there to divide them. And a lot of that came out during the church committee hearings in the 70s, but it never stopped. They even had plans to assassinate Occupy leaders during that whole movement in the early 2010s. The federal infiltration of groups that they see to be as subversive, I mean, that goes back decades and decades and decades. But we're still going to pretend like that's just a crazy conspiracy theory? And that's how all these assholes like Snopes and PolitiFact are putting it. They're like, oh, that's just nuts. Certainly the FBI would never do anything like that. I mean, that's as crazy as spying on and trying to blackmail Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, that's crazy. That would have never happened, right? Right? And it seems like a lot of people honestly do not want to even know about this. They don't want to know. And I guess it's easier to wave that flag and have that pride if you just, you know, turn a blind eye to any of this. But, I mean, you're just being willfully ignorant. And you're not doing this country any favors. I love this fucking country. But I'm not going to sit here and lie. I'm not going to pretend like our government isn't full of crooked assholes. I'm not going to pretend like most of them aren't sock puppets that'll do whatever the fuck they're told to do. I have no, illusions. But I still love this goddamn country. And anybody that says you gotta be mutually exclusive, either you go along with everything that your tribe says, or you're a traitor, fuck them. A lot of the things that our government does behind our backs and in our names is fucking disgraceful. And the first step in trying to do something about it is admitting that there is a problem. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're just a pussy. There was also this story about a news lady down in Houston who blew the whistle on her station, telling her what she could and couldn't report on as far as certain medical treatments that you're not supposed to talk about. And I mean, it's not that big of a leap of logic to figure out why that would be. I mean, some of the biggest revenue for these places comes from pharmaceutical companies. The same people that might take a hit if it comes out that there is a treatment for something that this vaccine that they have emergency use authorization for would not be authorized for if there was a treatment. So what do you know? They don't want people to talk about that.
Now, a few weeks later, they send me to cover COVID treatment at a local hospital. And the doctor says that he's had a lot of success with his patients and he's using hydroxychloroquine. So that soundbite was never supposed to reach the public ears, according to my bosses, because that drug was no longer a part of the narrative. So even though the fact was a local doctor was indeed giving his patients this, Fox didn't want to let people know that. Later on, I researched the death rates at that hospital. They are incredibly low. Very few COVID-19 patients die at that hospital. So it's very interesting that a hospital that's having such great success that Fox wouldn't want to let the public know everything that doctor is using.
And then she's been getting smeared all over the place, and they're trying to paint her as a disgruntled former employee, like she got fired and then she decided to make this shit up to get back at him. But I'm not sure how that works because she came out with the shit on the air. She was in the middle of a live report and she just dropped the bomb.
Region. Fox 26 reporter Ivory Hecker is live in Montgomery County to take a look at that aspect.
Thanks, guys. That's right. Before we get to that story, I want to let you, the viewers, know that Fox Corp has been muzzling me to keep certain information from you, the viewers. And from what I'm gathering, I am not the only reporter being subjected to this. I am going to be releasing some recordings about what goes on behind the scenes at Fox because it applies to you, the viewers. I found a nonprofit journalism group called Project Veritas. It's going to help put that out tomorrow, so tune into them. But as for this heat wave across Texas, you can see what it's doing to AC units.
That was ballsy. I gotta salute her for that. I mean, that's really amazing. The fact that I still have to try to point out to people that the media is controlled and there are things that they're not supposed to talk about and there are lines they're not supposed to cross. The fact that I even have to still explain that to people at this point is really kind of depressing because it's so fucking obvious. I mean, how much more do you need? How much more do you need to see before you realize that these people aren't there to inform you? They're there to misinform you. Their big glitzy studio and their perfect makeup and hair and their chiseled face, and then they're just reading a teleprompter. They're given orders, and they have almost no leeway of what they're allowed to talk about and what they're forbidden to talk about. But it takes guts for somebody like this to stand up, so fucking hats off to her. And hopefully that'll give other people the courage to do something similar, and to stand up and do something and say, this is bullshit and I've had enough. You know, maybe if there's a flood of people quitting and saying, I'm done with lying and I want to tell the truth, then, you know, maybe some of the more thick-headed will finally open up their eyes and see that a lot of this is just an illusion. Sláinte.
All I have in this world is my thoughts and my word, and I don't break them for no one. So say good night to the bad guy. night, so say good night to the bad guy. So say good night, so say good night to the bad guy. Come on. Come on. Come on. So say good night, so say good night to the bad guy. So say good night, so say good night to the bad guy. So say good night, so say good night to the bad guy. So say good night, so say good night to the bad guy. So say good night, so say good night to the bad guy. So say good night, so say good night, so say good night to the bad guy. So say good night, so say good night to the bad guy. So say good night, so say good night, so say good night to the bad guy. I told you, don't fuck with me. 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 You stupid fuck. Look at you now.